Hello, I'm Rachel and I'm the Resource and Communications Manager at Forum Strategy.
Hello, I'm Michael McGarvey. I'm Managing Director at The Key.
So today I'm going to be speaking with Michael about the findings of the cost of living research conducted by The Key in conjunction with Forum Strategy. The research explores the potential impacts of the cost of living crisis on academy trusts and their communities, and also looks into how trust leaders are responding so far. So welcome, Michael. To begin with, could you share with us a little bit about The Key and your work with trusts and schools, and also a little bit about your role too?
Thanks, Rachel. Yeah, I head up the team at The Key. In a nutshell, we provide high quality guidance for school leaders. We're one of the largest membership organisations in the sector. We're trusted by over 12,500 schools and trusts across the country. I think we're also a barometer for the sentiment in the sector. We listen to our members on a daily basis. We know what issues are on their mind and the support and the topics that they're searching for. So
why did Forum Strategy and The Key decide to undertake a survey this summer on the potential impacts of the cost of living crisis on academy trusts?
I think the cost of living crisis hasn't just appeared. It's increasingly become a core issue for school and trust leaders over the course of this year. I think it was obvious that for a lot of schools, the budgets they tried to make in the summer were in some ways provisional, and they were kind of caveated on understanding some really big changes in the landscape. So we wanted an early temperature check to get some intelligence on where trust leaders are at on this matter. And it's fair to say we probably need to repeat this survey during the winter. A lot has moved on since we surveyed our members. It's worth noting the dates of this survey were, I think, from about 11th of July to 15th of August. So they straddle the announcement of the Teachers' Pay Awards. So in hindsight, we might expect staffing costs to be even more important in terms of their responses.
So who was the survey sent to and who responded?
Right, we polled all the forum members and we polled all the trust leadership who are subscribers to The Key. We had 133 respondents, 3/4 of whom were from the C teams, and they were really well distributed from all corners of the country. So it's a small, but what we think is quite a robust sample size and big enough to give us some quite useful indicators.
So obviously we've been hearing a lot in recent weeks about the seriousness of this issue in education and more widely. Is that reflected in the views of the trust leaders in this survey? And do they feel it's going to impact their trusts and communities?
I think the first thing to say is that for most CEOs, their first responsibility is to their community. So yes, a cost of living crisis, and I think it is a crisis, goes to the heart of what they stand for. A strong trust is only as good as the support for the most vulnerable. So for me, it jumps right to the top of any agenda. I think cost of living is also a really pervasive issue. It goes way beyond curriculum, pedagogy, and really reflects the social and economic agenda that is needed really to support, learning and achievement. When you hear about a trust in the Southeast, maybe a dozen school trust, whose extra heating bills are going to be £1.8 million, it kind of gives you a sense of scale, and inevitably it leads to a series of really tough choices.
So in what areas do trust leaders feel that the impact's going to be most significant?
Far and away, number one, and the number two topics identified were, number one was rising energy costs, number two was staffing costs. Over half of respondents selected the energy costs, and nearly a third selected staffing costs as the most impactful challenge.
And could you talk me through how trusts are supporting their schools?
There's a range of approaches, Rachel, that I'll call out. I guess the first theme is they're supporting their schools. The two common approaches that were identified. One was curriculum provision, making sure that the ICFP, the integrated curriculum financial planning tool, was being used to try and help drive staff decisions and curriculum coverage. The second one was kind of thinking about trust-wide procurement. Can we bring some supplier contracts into the central team and take advantage of economies of scale. So that's the kind of two big themes on supporting schools. Energy costs got a number of very different responses. A lot of really positive stuff in here, quite small things on the surface, but what ladder up over time into quite significant changes. From training and guidance on how to use electricity more efficiently, how to choose more energy efficient tools, things like LEDs rather than light bulbs, for example. But then also the kind of what I'd probably think about capital expenditure items, things like installing solar panels, and also provision of electric vehicle leases emerged in some of the responses as well. So there's kind of responses around staff costs. There's also responses around how do we help our school staff. Cycle to work schemes were flagged as an initiative. Some respondents identified that trusts are increasingly sharing teaching and leadership staff across their trust. The same applied to some ancillary staff as well, roles like educational psychologists across the trust. And quite common was the kind of sharing of resources, textbook, PE equipment, topic-based resources, and deploying staff almost on an in-house bank basis rather than going through an agency. The final category was probably how can we support families and pupils better? I'll call out three items which was probably the most prevalent in the survey. One was reviewing supplier costs that impact families. And one of those is like, for example, uniform suppliers, maybe increasing use of non-branded uniforms. The second one was looking hard at school trip policies and school trip provisions. And the third one was actually an investment, which was great to see, by the way, investing more in pupil wellbeing services.
So what percentage of trusts are collaborating with others to address the cost pressure challenge? And what different forms is that collaboration taking?
I would say that the response to this is probably heightened by virtue of your survey members. We can clearly see that over half of all trust leaders are collaborating around best practice in the sector, which is great. The type of activities are training events, information sharing, and peer-to-peer support.
And did any respondents feel that despite the challenge, there were any positives to emerge? And if so, what were they?
Some positives, Rachel. About a third of trusts identified that there are some silver linings to this. The whole theme around environmental sustainability over the long term should ladder up to benefits, doing the right things. And more broadly, some staff identified that regardless of their seniority, it's forcing everybody to actually look at costs in a kind of holistic way, which in terms of the value for money agenda, which can only be a good thing. So about a third of all people responded to the survey.
And what from this research do we think will be the things to help trusts through this crisis?
We titled this survey kind of tough choices. And so the first item, and probably the most important I'd call out, is board level discussions. They're unprecedented challenges that require tough decisions. So every trust will need a board that fully understands them and supports and challenges their senior team, almost a critical friend in many ways. And I think once that plan is defined, once that plan is agreed, I think that serves then as the platform for wider collaboration, more creative approaches. But I'd certainly start at the board in terms of those big decisions.
What are the next steps for the Key following this research? And what are you hoping that sharing the findings at Forum Strategy's National Trust Leaders CEO Conference will achieve?
Well, first thing I think we should probably repeat this survey in the autumn term. A lot's happening. It's a fast moving space. Finance and admin for the Key in terms of our information services. We already, our schools read about 500,000 articles a year on that particular topic. So for me, it's incumbent on us to use that reach to start gathering and sharing best practice from across the trust sector. We need to gather those insights, gather those advice, and actually create more information and support for our members. That's our mission, so that's what we need to do.
And finally, was there anything else that came out of the survey that respondents wanted to raise around this?
Yeah, I do want to raise something. Unsurprisingly, the political dimensions of this challenge start to come to the fore in terms of the responses that you see. Trusts increasingly, they've always engaged with students, families and communities, and some are linking the political choices that they make with the impacts on lives and learning and well-being. So yeah, that's actually linking policy decisions to choices that a trust can make. The other notable example, and I'll call out the particular trust, Tees Value Education Trust, was quite happy to share initiatives that it was working on, and that was actually encouraging its children and its families to engage with social justice, to help think about this agenda and this issue more deeply. So a range of different activities and responses.
Well, thank you so much, Michael. It's been great speaking with you today. And we're really looking forward to sharing this research at Forum Strategy's National Trust Leaders CEO Conference on the 22nd of September. So thank you for your time today.